Hello everyone, this is Undead Viking coming to you with another board game video review. The game I'm going to be reviewing today is a Game of Thrones from Fantasy Flight Games. This is the second edition of the game, as you can see. I have to admit, I've only played the second edition version of this game perhaps half a dozen times. However, I have played a heck of a lot of the first edition game. You notice that whereas this particular thing, I believe that's supposed to be King's Landing there on the front there, but on this cover, if you're familiar with the books or the show, there you go. You can see Jon Snow, and you can see there's his dog, or wolf, I should say, ghost. But what's really cool about this particular version of the game, and this is just nothing special. This one game is very, very unique in the fact that this was actually Scott Nicholson's copy. You can see there. I bought this from him, and I got him to sign it for me. So anyway, moving on. When the first edition of the game came out, they came out with a couple of expansions. There's a Clash of Kings and the Storm of Swords, and it added a little bit of different changes to the game and altered some things, and also, for the most part, fixed a very major problem with the game, that of ports and ships and ports and so on. And unfortunately, and it seemed like forever. This is the first edition game was out of print. Nobody could get a hold of it. People were scrambling for copies. And, you know, of course, when the Dance with Dragons, the fifth book of the series, finally came out, and if you've been reading the series, you know exactly what I mean. When it finally came out, everybody was really excited. And then also, HBO now, if you don't know, if you've been living underneath a rock, has the dramatic TV version of the show. And actually, I'm doing this review on purpose right now because if you're like me, you're excited about the second season that's coming out on April 1st. So you may be watching this video after April 1st, but that's why I'm doing this right now. But what the really nice thing about the second edition of the game is that they went in and they actually incorporated a lot of the things that worked from the two expansions, and they put it all into this game, including making the game for 3 to 6 people. Normally, the first edition game was for 3 to 5, and the expansion actually extended it out to 6 by adding House Martell to the game. And House Martell is in the second edition. So, thematically, what this game is about, it's a war for the Iron Throne. If you are totally unfamiliar with the Game of Thrones world, the Song of Ice and Fire, and so on and so forth, I do apologize. There's going to be a lot of references to different houses and different things about that series that you may not know. But if you don't know anything about the whole Game of Thrones series, you should still be able to understand how the game works, and you should be able to understand how, really, it's a really good game. If you're into negotiation, and you're into secret orders, and if you like coming up with strategic plans and strategic combat, because unless you add an expansion, which I'll explain while I do go over the game mechanics, the game, for the most part, is very non-random. There's some card draws and things like that will switch things up, but for the most part, all of the information, as far as each player, is completely and totally open to the other players around the table. And so when you're going to be in combat, and when you're going to be fighting other people and taking over different areas on the board and so on and so forth, there's no dice rolling. What it is you're trying to determine how much strength you have, how much strength you think your opponent's going to have, and what kind of cards are at your disposal and things like that. And so it's all the information is right there. It's just you need to outmaneuver the other people that are playing to win the game. Whereas if you're playing a game where you're rolling dice, you can always just tell yourself, you know, if I get really, really lucky, I might win the battle anyway. But not in this case. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit. I'm going to show you exactly how you play the game of Game of Thrones. I'm going to kind of show you how the board works and all the different cards and everything like that. And then I will tell you exactly what I think of the game. I will say this, if you're worried, if you haven't read the books or anything like that, Right now, I haven't given away any kind of spoilers or anything like that. Other than the fact that I will say this one thing, just if in case you're wondering where this game takes place, this is with the Iron Throne has been vacated. And if you've read the books, you know exactly at what point that is. So there's no king, and so all the different houses are now left kind of scrabbling, trying to elevate themselves to being able to claim that kingship. And that's all I'm going to say as far as that goes. So, however, when you get the game, it'll tell you exactly what exactly happened. But if you haven't got the game, or you don't want to know that, but that's the period in which this game takes place. It isn't, you know, during the Feast for Crows book or Dance with Dragons books. It's in that very first book. It's after a certain event. So, other than that, let me tell you exactly how this game is played, and then I'll tell you exactly what I think. All right, let's do this. Okay, here it is, the main game board for a Game of Thrones. This differs slightly from the old first edition map. They've gone with kind of a muted tone to make this look more like a real map. I guess that's what I'm guessing. That's what I'm interpreting, I guess, as far as the changes. A lot of people like the older map because it was a little brighter than this, but I actually dig this one more. I like the fact that it does look like a real map that's been weathered by age and by the sun and time and so on and so forth. Just a quick overview. I am going to focus in on separate sections of the board to explain how the game is run, and also I will be focusing in even further to show combat and things like that. The game board is just too huge for me to actually show, and it's too far back, and I want to highlight some things. But up here you have a Wildling track, and for those of you familiar with the Game of Thrones, you'll know what the Wildlings are. They're a race of free people that aren't under any rule, but they are prevented from coming south by the Great Wall in the frozen north. The north is where the Starks are located. Over here you find Pike, where House Greyjoy. A little further south from them you'll find Lannisport with the Lannisters. Over here you will locate Dragonstone, where the House Baratheon begins. And then if you move further south, you will find the House Tyrell, and then I'll move this up a little bit, and here you have the Sun Spear down here where House Martell begins, all the way down there. So you can see how big this map is. It's just, this board is huge. It's going to take up some space on your table. This table that I have it on is my smaller gaming table, and this is a 4-foot square. So you can kind of judge, you know, how big this map is. Just really briefly, as I said, there's the Wildling track over here. This is the Influence track over here. The Supply track, and you have a Round track and the Victory track over here. This is the Rounds, this is the Victory. And I will show those in closer detail, but I wanted to give you an idea of how large this map was, and also just so when I'm highlighting different sections of the board, you'll know where those are. Alright, well let's move forward, and I'll show you those different sections of the board. Okay, let's start with the Influence track. This track, at a glance, will tell you a lot of information as far as how the game is going. There are 3 tracks: the Iron Throne track, the Fiefdoms track, and the King's Court track. To put it more bluntly, this is the turn order, this is how good you are at combat, and this is how many special orders you get to have. Now, I'm going to preface this in the following rest of the rules. I'm probably going to explain rules that won't make sense right now, but after you get done watching all of the rules, it'll be very, very straightforward. So, like when I say special orders, I do apologize that I'm not going to show you the special orders just yet, but later on I'll refer back to this moment and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Alright, so each one of these has a spot. I set up a 6-player game, and so each one of these is a token, and each house that is playing has a spot on this board. And so like here, this is House Baratheon. You can see there's a stag there. Here's a Lannister, a lion, and so forth. You know, the flower of House Tyrell, things like that. And so you can see as far as which house is in the lead. So this is obviously the first part, and all the way down. See, like they actually have numbers. There's a 6, there's a 1. Now, All of these work exactly the same, except for the King's Court will work differently if you have 4 players. There is an overlay that you'll put over it like so. Basically that is so if you have 4 players, you have a situation there where either instead of having the one spot getting this 1 star, which means 1 special order, the 4th player doesn't get any. So, I'm going to start at the top. The Iron Throne, this is basically a turn order. Turn order means a lot in this game, especially since the game can be won at any time. So the earlier you go, the better off you are, because then your actions and your orders take precedent over everyone else's. Also, if you happen to be in the first place, like House Baratheon is at the beginning of the game, you get what's called as this, the Iron Throne counter. Now, whoever holds onto the Iron Throne counter gets to break any ties, except for ties in combat. So, when you are allowed to break the ties, that includes, say, breaking a tie for when you're bidding on these locations. If I'm House Baratheon, and I bid the same amount for being the number 1 in the Iron Throne as, say, House Stark, I can decide who's going to win, because I have this token. I'm just going to say, yeah, I'm going to keep winning. And so, all those things, those ties, determine you hold a lot of sway over the rest of the board and the rest of the players. Here we have the Valyrian Steel Blade. This determines your prowess in combat. The major thing is that this is the ability to break ties in combat. If 2 houses are in battle, and they end up being tied as far as the strength goes, you take a look at this track and you determine who's ahead. So let's say House Martell and House Stark were in combat. They both had a strength of, say, 5. Who wins? House Martell would win the combat because of the fact that they would be higher up on this track. You'll notice that also in the first place, you get this. This is the Valyrian Steel Blade token, and it is required that if you get this, you have to go when you play around with it. You'll notice the back side of it is different colored. The reason for this is because the owner of this particular token, once per turn in a combat that they're involved in, they can flip this for a +1 strength in combat, something that will undoubtedly, in many situations, give the win to them because of the fact that they can add that +1. Always handy to have this weapon. All right, and the final one is the crows. If you're familiar with the books, you know that the crows are the messengers. They don't use messenger pigeons. They use messenger ravens, messenger crows. And as I said, these are the special orders. And I'll explain special orders again later on. But for every star, that's how many special orders you get to play on your turn. Special orders are just like normal orders, except they're more powerful and they have a little more use. So having more special orders is always good. Now, also, if you happen to be in the top level, and you know as the Lannisters are, it seems to fit, right? Anyway, you get this. This is the Raven token. The Raven token allows you one of 2 options each turn. One, you're able to look at the top card in the Wildling deck, and you can decide whether or not you want to leave it there or put it underneath and bury it. I'll explain the Wildling deck in a little bit. Or you can use it to alter one of the orders that you place on the board after everybody else has revealed what they've done. So, and then once you do that, you flip it over, and that backside has no raven. All right, so that is the influence track. Let us move on. All right, here we have the supply track. This is very, very straightforward. This is the opening part of the game, and I've once again have a 6-player game. These are all stacked up. These are the other 5 houses. The barrels represent the supplies that your army needs to maintain themselves. And every player, or every house, starts with 2 except for House Stark, because they're up in the north and there isn't a lot of food and what have you. As the game goes, you'll take over more areas that supply you with more barrels, and that'll allow you to increase your stature on this track, and also, most importantly, it actually increases the amount of armies that you can maintain. These numbers and flags that you have below here tell you how many armies you can have and how many units can be in each of those armies. An army is defined by any spot on the board where 2 or more friendly units are sharing the space. So, in the beginning, these houses can all have 3 armies, 1 with 3 units, and then 2 with 2, whereas House Stark can have 1 with 3 units and 1 with 2. Now, it must be noted that you can actually have as many single units on the board as you want. There's no supply restrictions for those. Now, as you obviously go up on the track, you will increase, and all you notice that the number 6 highest level you get 1 army with 4, an army with 3, and 3 armies with 2. Now, the really interesting thing about this track is that even though you may take a location that has a barrel, you don't automatically increase your supply. You actually have to wait for a supply card to be drawn from the Westeros deck, and once again, I will explain the Westeros deck in just a few moments, but once that is done, that is when you look at how many barrels each house has, and then you adjust on this track, as to where they are located, as far as how many supplies they have. And then you can start having larger armies. Now, this can work both for you and against you. Let's say, for example, here we have House Greyjoy. And House Greyjoy is sitting at supply level 4, but he's fallen on hard times, and he's actually lost 2 barrels. But no supply card has been drawn. And so for the time being, he's able to maintain having these 4 armies, even though his supply is only 2. Now, when a supply card is actually drawn, then he'll be forced to actually move his barrel down to the 2, and he'll have to actually lose armies to match up with what he needs to. So if he's got 2 armies with 3 and 2 armies with 2, he'll have to somehow, by removing units from the board, move down to having 1 army of 3 and 2 armies of 2. Now, that actually can work against you. It just, obviously, as you can probably figure out, if you're sitting here on 2, but you should be on 5, and you're just sitting there waiting for a supply card to be drawn so you can increase your armies. Unfortunately, the situation is that you can't have a bigger army until that supply card is drawn, and then you move your token back up. That is the supply section of the board. I really like this. I think it's kind of cool. Like I said, it can work for you, and it can work against you. And there's always somebody who ends up licking the fuzzy side of the popsicle as far as this goes, because they just can't seem to ever hit the supply at the right time and be able to field the larger armies that they should be able to. All right, moving on. Okay, here is the round marker and the victory line for a Game of Thrones. Very, very simple to explain. First, I'll just show you the victory. You'll notice at the beginning of the game with all 6 players, to maybe offset the fact that he doesn't have a lot of supplies and he's stuck up in the frozen north, you notice that House Stark is the only one of the houses that starts on a 2, whereas everyone else starts on a 1. What this is it tracks how many castles and strongholds you currently control. Now, as you gain castles or strongholds, you move your marker, further up and down on this track. And this changes immediately when those things happen. So, and the reason for that is that the moment one person gets to 7, meaning that they take over an enemy stronghold, or perhaps they are able to move into a neutral area that has a castle that nobody has been able to take, and say like the Eyrie, then they immediately win the game. There's nothing like saying, okay, everybody else gets 1 more turn to maybe tie them or anything like that. No, in this case, you immediately win the game and you are crowned the new ruler of Westeros, and also you get to bask in the glory of everyone else saying good game or cursing you. I like that. I like the fact that you always have to be on your toes to make sure that nobody is not within just a breath of winning the game. And trust me, when people start getting further and further up on this victory track, anybody that you have been counting on being your friends very quickly no longer are. The round track is obviously a round track. It just moves forward as the game progresses. you'll notice that there are 10 rounds to the game. I like the fact that this is a timed game that doesn't just last forever. It isn't a game that you just continue to play and play and play. You will always notice, at least it's been my experience, that when the game starts, everybody kind of just keeps to themselves the first few rounds, and then all of a sudden that's when things start getting bloody. And as this gets closer and closer to the 10th round, things get more and more bloody and more tenacious and more tense. If you reach round 10 without anybody actually claiming with 7, you will just, at the end of round 10, you will just see who has the most, the highest on this track. If there's nobody on 7. If 2 people tie, then you go by the strongholds over castles. Strongholds are basically the larger of the 2 types of castles. Normally, they count exactly the same, but in a tiebreaker situation, if you have more strongholds, you will win the game. So, that is the round track and also the victory track. Alright, now let's actually move forward, and I'm going to actually kind of show you the orders and how the flow of the game works. Alright, I do apologize. I did say that I was going to show you how the flow of the game worked and how the orders work, but I'm going to show you the Wildling track first because I said I would. At the beginning of the game, the Wildling power starts at level 2. As you draw Westeros cards, some of those will have symbols that will tell you to increase the power of the Wildlings, and they slowly move up this track. Now, thematically, the Wildlings are this race of barbarians, basically, that live far to the north of the cultured lands. They are prevented from coming south due to the fact that the Great Wall cuts them off from the rest of the world. Now, if you've read the books and if you know what's going on, they find ways to attack the Night's Watch, which basically protect the rest of the land from these incursions. Now, if you draw a Westeros card that says that the Wildlings attack, you will draw a card from the Wildling deck here, and then you will resolve that. If the marker ever gets to level 12 without getting a Wildling attack, which can happen, it doesn't happen a lot, but it can happen, then the Wildlings will attack immediately and you draw a card. The power of the Wildlings is determined by the level they are at on this track. After the Wildling attack, if they attacked below the 12, regardless of the outcome, you reduce their power by 2, and then you continue playing. If they made it all the way to 12, and they made an attack, you reduce them all the way back down to 0, and then you start over. Now, when you draw a Wildling card, you'll just draw one. I'm just going to draw one here. And then you first hold a power bid. The power bid basically is thematically, it is the representation of all the houses of Westeros sending men and supplies to the Night's Watch to help them defeat the Wildlings. Now, you have to equal the amount of power that you're basically bidding has to equal the power of the Wildlings in order to defeat them. If you don't defeat them, then whoever bid the lowest will have something bad happen to them. If you do defeat them, whoever bid the most will have something good happen to them. So now we turn this card over. We'll just show this to you. And this one is Rattleshirt's Raiders. And if you look at the top, it says Wildling victory, lowest bidder is reduced 2 positions on the supply track to no lower than 0. And everyone else is reduced 1 position on the supply track no lower than 0. So you can see that that is going to mess with your supplies and mess with your armies. Now if you look at the bottom, it says Night's Watch victory. It says highest bidder is increased 1 position on the supply track no higher than 6. So it can be something very, very good if you can pull this off. Now remember when I showed you the Raven token and how they were able to see these cards? Now that is one of the powers that is really helpful. Now you would know, well, I don't want to be the lowest bidder because I don't want to reduce my supply. Maybe I want to make sure that we win because I want to increase my supply by 1. Something that is, very, very awesome to have if you're in charge of the Raven. And that is how the Wildling track works. So now I will move on and I will show you the flow of the game and how the orders work. Alright, this is where it gets really fun.
Okay, here we go. We're almost to showing you the action of the board. But on every turn but the very first turn, you will turn over these Westeros cards. You can see they're listed 1, 2, 3. Pretty simple, right? And you just turn these over one at a time, starting with 1, moving on to 3, and you do what the card tells you. So we'll just take this number 1 card, and we look at the card. And you notice, first off, there's this Wildling symbol up there. So on the track, you'll move the Wildling up 1 on the track. If this would get it to the top of the track, immediately an attack occurs, and you need to resolve that. But, however, you do read this, and it says, Throne of Blades. Now, the holder of the Iron Throne token chooses whether A, everyone updates their supply, then reconciles their armies, so you move your barrel marker up and down depending on what's going on. B, everyone gets to muster units, meaning at this point if you have any castles or strongholds in your possession and you have room for more armies, you can do so. And or C, this card has no effect. So the person who has the Iron Throne, which is that first influence track bar, gets to choose this. So they make their choice, and we move on. So we turn the next card over. Once again, we have a Wildling symbol. And this one says, Dark Wings, Dark Words. The holder of the Messenger Raven, that's the third track on the influence, chooses whether A, everyone bids on the 3 different influence tracks. So now we would immediately take our power tokens, and we would bid on those particular locations to see who might switch those up, if any, for that matter. B, everyone collects 1 power token for every power icon present in areas they control. So you'll look at the board, and I'll show you the board here in just a little bit, but the power icons are little crowns, so you count those up and you get some more power tokens. Or once again, C, this card has no effect. So once again, that person gets to make that choice. And finally, the last one, wow, another Wildling symbol. And you can see here the Sea of Storms. Raid orders cannot be played during this planning phase. So we would now immediately go into the planning phase, and any raid icons that people would like to choose to use, unfortunately, cannot be used in this particular turn. Now, you'll understand that more when I show you the planning phase coming up next. Now, I just want to show you, in these decks, there's other cards. Let me just find one to show you. Like, here's one that's mustering, that just allows people to get more units. And let me find a Clash of Kings. Well, actually, here, I'll show you this. Here's a supply. So that would actually encourage everybody to go ahead and adjust their barrels on the supply tokens again. And there is another icon here where it says, right here, it says, Winter is Coming. So whenever this card comes up, you immediately shuffle the deck number 1, and you redraw. Now, what this does is it prevents possibly a mustering or a supply card from showing up because of the fact that you're constantly reshuffling the deck. And so you might, since the game only lasts 10 turns, you might go 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 turns with really needing a supply or a muster, and it's just not showing up. Basically because this card, you notice the evil little other sitting there. Preventing it from happening, because if this card constantly comes up and you're constantly reshuffling, well, just bad luck, right? So, and I do apologize, I think the Clash of Kings is in here. Once again, this one has a Winter is Coming, but yes, here. The Clash of Kings, and when the Clash of Kings card pops up, that's when you immediately rebid all of the influence tracks as well. So, these are really cool cards. I mean, it does add a little bit of randomness to the game, but it doesn't add a ton of randomness. You can kind of plan on the cards. Once you play the game enough, you kind of get used to, which cards are in which decks and what you can expect. But because of those cards that cause you to reshuffle, you can never guarantee things. All right, let's show you the planning phase. All right, what you see here is the middle of the game board for Game of Thrones. I have set up this portion of the game. This might be where it is up to the second or third turn of the game. And as you can see here, these are the forces of Stark. These are the forces of House Greyjoy, and these are the forces of House Lannister down here in red. If I can just take a couple of seconds just to show you what these look like. These are plastic pieces, but you can see there's like this marbling to them. I I mean, they look cool and all, and I mean, they definitely are nice. Honestly, I actually preferred the wooden pieces from the first edition, and I'm actually showing you these because these are what come with the game. When I play this, I actually substitute out my old wooden pieces because I actually like them better. That's just me. I know a lot of people actually prefer these because they just kind of look really cool and they're shiny and what have you. But anyway, what has happened is that the planning phase is over. Everybody has placed their commands in the locations where they have units. Wherever you have a unit, you place one of these little circles, and on the reverse side is one of the commands that you can give to the armies that you have. The commands are defending, marching, which is your way that you actually move into an area and attack it to take it over. Support, which is a way that you can aid in an attack without actually moving into the space. You're aiding what's going on in that space. Raiding, which case raiding is basically you're terrorizing that particular location and you're preventing certain orders from actually occurring. And finally, consolidating power, which is a way that you can use to, if it's a normal order without a star on it, you can use that to gain more power chits that you can use for when you are doing bidding and other things in the game. And if it's a star and you happen to do it on a location that has a fortress or a stronghold, you can use it to actually build more units. Now then, just a couple of things just so you can kind of see what this is. This little chit here is for the Eyrie. This is a neutral spot. If you're familiar with the story, you'll understand why this is neutral. And this number here is the strength and the power of that location, which is a 6, meaning that you'd have to have a strength of 6 to move in and take over the Eyrie. You can see on like this location, you can see there's a couple of barrels there. That's for building your supply if you have control of that location. You can see this spot has a crown on it. The crown, any spot with a crown is used for when you do a consolidate power, or also when certain cards are drawn, certain Westeros cards, you count those and you get icons of power that you use, as I said before, for bidding and so forth. And you can see over here in Lannisport and in Pike, where the home countries of both Greyjoy and Lannister are, there's these 2 little cardboard tokens with a 2 on them. That is the garrison that is in that location. Basically, it's extra strength. It's your garrison of soldiers. That little extra help to defend you. If you ever lose that, it's gone forever. But for the time being, neither of the home places of either of those locations have been taken, so they're still in effect. You can see here, like here's a little bridge, and you can see there's a river. You can only cross the river where there is a bridge. So whereas like say these units can attack these, but this unit and this unit could attack each other and so forth. But anyway, that's just kind of the way that it looks. Oh, and one other thing I should show you. This is what's considered a castle. That's where the area is. But a stronghold is slightly bigger. So if you look at, say, Lannisport, you can see it's a slightly larger castle. And that's the difference between the strongholds and the castles. And as far as how many units you can build there when you're doing a muster. But as I said, I've already done the laying of the orders now, just because it would be boring for you to watch me place those out. And this is where the game within the game happens. Certain players will be working together, certain players will have alliances with others, and certain players will have made assurances with other players that they're going to aid them in certain attacks, or they won't attack them in certain locations, and so forth. And so for the purposes of this storyline, let us just say that the Lannisters and the Greyjoys have had an agreement of sorts that they're going to be working together against Stark. And what Lannister doesn't know is that the player that's controlling Stark and the player that's controlling Greyjoy have been working together in secret and are going to turn on House Lannister on this turn. Now, what happens is after all the planning is done, everybody flips their command tokens over. So just give me a few moments here, and I'll flip these particular tokens over, and we will go from there. So and I do apologize. There's quite a few little these to be flip over, and so I appreciate you bearing with me while I do this. So you'll notice that some of these orders, such as this order, have a little star on them, and that is the bonus. Is, if you remember, I showed you on the different lines of influence. If you are on the King's Court or the Crow line, that's how many star orders you can actually commit during that turn. But anyway, so you go by turn order. So in this case, House Greyjoy is first. We're just going to say that right now. And so House Greyjoy would say, do House Greyjoy have any raid orders that they're going to fulfill? And so you look all over here, and they have no raid orders. The only raid order is here on this little boat right here. And so then they say, well, then the next player would be House Stark. And House Stark, do you have any raid orders? And House Stark says yes. And so this boat, what is it going to raid? And so this particular boat is going to raid Crackclaw Point right here. And so what you do is you take this particular order, take that order off as well. And so now this order, which normally would have been a support order that could possibly have helped these 3 units here, unfortunately is gone and can't be used. So there are no more of the raid orders to commit. I mean, there might be some on other sides of the board, but for this purpose, that is all that is done at this time. And so you say, okay, well, House Greyjoy is first. House Greyjoy, will you do your moves? And so at this time, you can see that they have 2 march orders. They have a march order over here in Pike, and they have a march order here in this. Look, I forget the name. River Run, of course. And so they, at this point, say yes. We have a march order we're going to do. We are going to move these units in here to attack these 2 units that are located here, that are Lannisport and Harrenhal. Now, obviously, they weren't expecting this, so they're maybe a little flabbergasted with House Greyjoy at this point, and maybe now House Lannister may be seeing the writing on the wall, as this particular location would have been able to support those, but unfortunately they're not because of the fact that Stark has raided them. And we have 2 footmen and a knight facing 2 footmen. Footmen are worth 1 point in combat, and knights are worth 2. So at this point, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 against 2. So right now, they are winning this particular combat, and it looks like the fate is sealed. However, there is one thing left that Lannister and Greyjoy must do before they take their turn, and that is the usage of these combat cards. And each side gets 7 of these. And on the backs of these are several different leaders that have a point total up in the corner. And I can twist these around so you can see there. And some of them will have swords. Swords mean that if after the combat, for every sword that is on a card, that means that you will kill 1 unit. And some of them will have flavor text, which isn't really flavor text. It actually is telling you that there's another action. So like Balon Greyjoy, you can see he's got 2, but on the bottom it says the printed combat strength of your opponent's house card is reduced to 0. So this is something that they can throw in, that they can defeat them even though Balon Greyjoy isn't there. And then if you notice here on Dagmar Clefclaw, there's this castle. For every castle that you have on your location, you can prevent the loss of 1 unit. So each player must now choose one of these cards. So let's just say that let's say he did take Balon Greyjoy. So okay, there he's got that. And now House Lannister, unbeknownst to him, says, "Well, I gotta defend my guy. I really don't want to lose it. I'm losing, by that many. Well, I still have Tywin, and he's worth 4. So I will use this guy. So I'm going to use him in combat. So now both people will reveal their particular cards. And they'll say, well, you know, it's like, haha, you know, I'm reducing your thing to 0. I'm going to win. So unfortunately, Tywin Lannister loses. There are no sword icons or anything like that. So because he has defeated them in that location, first thing first, he loses this particular token, meaning that he was going to do a consolidate power in that location, which would have gained him 1 for the token and 1 for every crown that was on the location, which we got 2 power tokens in that particular spot. And now they have to retreat. So he can say, well, you know, I guess we'll retreat back to the Stony Sept. And you can't retreat back into an enemy-held territory, but you can retreat back into neutral-held territory. So they won that location. Oh, and I should have mentioned that since this was a +1 on the march order, they actually had +1 to their combat strength. So they were pretty much going to win that combat regardless. So maybe I didn't choose the best card for that, but I'm just giving you a feel for it. So now, do we have any other orders? Well, we do have this march order right here. Now, the only reason I'm really having this march order to show you is I wanted to show you how ship movement works. Ships basically are big land bridges. For every ship that's in a location, your units can just move right through them. And with any number of spaces for 1 point of movement. And normally, things can only move once. So, these 2 units that are here on Pike, because they're moving, and you'll notice that the march order is at a -1. So if they actually got into a combat, they'd actually be at less power. They're just going to use these 2 boats, and they're going to move over here and land on Seaguard. And so now they've strengthened this location here, and now those can in turn be used to support, you know, like move down here into this location, perhaps next turn or what have you. Now, I should have mentioned that due to the fact that they've left Riverrun, when you do leave a location, if you wish to maintain control of that location, you have to leave a power token left if you have one available. So if Greyjoy leaves that there, they maintain control of that location. And next turn, they're probably going to have to move some units in there to maintain control. And most likely, Lannister will fight them at that spot if need be. But who knows? We'll see what happens next turn. Well, you won't, but if I were to play it out, we would know. So now we are done with those orders. We remove this one. We remove the orders that are still available, such as this token, which was being used to consolidate power, and this token, which was this boat doing a defense, but most likely that's not going to come into play. And now House Stark gets to go. So House Stark is going to attack. So if you notice, House Stark moves these with his +1 march. He moves in there, and he uses this support to have this unit here support this attack. So he's got a knight, 2 footmen, and a footman helping. So 2, 3, 4, 5. And in this location, we have 2 knights and a footman, meaning that they have 5. And you notice that these knights were going to march. They were planning on attacking themselves, but unfortunately, they're not going to be able to do that because they're already embroiled in a combat as it is. So now, House Stark gets to go ahead and look at his cards, and he looks through and he decides that he wants to actually kill some people, so he's going to take Eddard. He's got 2 swords. So he takes these 2, and then House Lannister realizes that he's probably losing because he's already behind 1 because of the +1 on the march order. He knows, because you can look at your opponent's cards that they have available at any time. He's looked at these cards. He knows he has these, so he's going to look through his deck and see if he can find one that might help him out a little bit. And paging through here, he's probably going to try to find something that. Like he could take Tyrion that would allow him to make him choose a different house card to reveal. So in other words, but he knows that if he does that, he's still got ones that are going to be able to let him beat anyway. So in this case, he's probably just going to want to try to protect himself so he doesn't actually lose some units. So he's just going to take the Hound, which has the two castles. So they lay these 2 cards down. They compare the strengths. House Stark is going to win that combat, but fortunately for House Lannister, the 2 swords do not take place. They are allowed to flee, and they will flee back in to Crackclaw Point, and now they have protection. They have taken over that location. So we remove these 2, and if you notice that this particular -1 march is still here. we're just going to move our knight down into the twins because House Stark doesn't quite trust Greyjoy just completely. He's got those 3 units there, so he's going to leave them there as a defense. And we remove that. Now, finally, we get to the Lannisters. Unfortunately, all of their attack orders have already been gone. They can't do anything else. So now at this point, they are going to have to use their... the only thing they have is this defense token. That doesn't matter. They're not being attacked. This defense token is removed as well. And now we just move to consolidated power orders. Now, as I said, for every consolidated power token that's used, you get 1 for the token and 1 for every crown that's in the location. So Balon Greyjoy would get 2 for this location right there. Lannister would get 1 for this one, and Lannister would get 2 for that location. And that's how you do your turns. And now, of course, House Lannister can say something clever like, a Lannister always pays their debts, and, can swear vengeance upon House Greyjoy and House Stark in the next turn. And it's a little clunky at first, but once you really get a grip on how all the orders work and how, what order you do them in, because you can do your orders, you have to do your certain orders in a certain order, like raids are first, and then you do your marches and so forth and supports, and then you do your collect influence. But if you have several different marches, you get to do them in any order you want. And like I said, it's the game within the game. It's trusting people not to attack you, trusting people to maintain their friendships with you, and and you can usually count on people ganging up on Lannister just because everybody hates them. But I'm going to move on at this point. I'm going to show you the optional combat rule that comes with this game, and then I'll do my conclusion. All right, let's do that. Okay, so here is the one kind of expansion or extra little added bit that they've put into this version of the game, and this is the Tides of Battle deck. The Tides of Battle deck is just this little deck with this little shield on it. What this does is, and I'll preface this by saying I don't use this, I don't really like this, but it's in here if you so desire. Whenever a battle occurs, both the attacker and the defender take a card off the top of the deck, and they look at them in secret, and so they look at them, and so you look at the icons. So this icon gives +2 to whoever has this, +2 to their combat strength, and this one gives you +1 to your combat strength, and it gives you extra defense. Remember, these will prevent casualties. So if either of these players has the Valyrian Steel Blade token, meaning they're the top of that influence track, that second influence track, they can, if it hasn't been used, use it this time to discard. So let's say this guy doesn't want this one. Discard that and draw a new one. And you got a +0. So unfortunately, that didn't work out for him. Now both people would reveal these. They'd adjust the combat strengths to whatever these add, and they'd have that effect. Now, I don't know. I guess, a lot of people, they like it because of the fact that then combat doesn't become just a nuts and bolts, plus this, add this, plus this, add this type of situation. They like a little more randomness. I don't know, I don't much care for it, and there's no specific reason why. I just think the game has a more pure role. Negotiation and strategy play more of a pure role when you don't use this, and that's the game that I'm looking for when I play Game of Thrones. But anyway, I just want to show that to you, just so you know that you get that with the game. All right. Well, let me tell you exactly what I think of a Game of Thrones, the board game. All right. So, that's how you play a Game of Thrones. All right. I am going to tell you exactly what I think about this game. But before I do that, one of the really, really awesome things about a Game of Thrones is the fact that if everybody's read the books and if everybody's watched the show, it's one of those shows and those books that inspires a lot of conversation. George R.R. Martin, whether or not we appreciate how quickly or how slowly he puts out his books, he is a very, very good storyteller, and nobody's perfect, obviously, but I will admit that his are books that actually managed to actually really grab me and actually make me care about the people that I'm reading about, even though they're totally made up. They're pieces of paper, and there are parts of the book that still just really upset me, that happened, and it's just like you wish, in a different world, something different had happened, and could you please just write that, George R. R. Martin, instead? But
Anyway, I'm getting beyond myself. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think about this game. But there's no spoilers at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually hold up these pieces of paper right here. And as I go through them, these are just basically going to be some thoughts that I have as far as the whole Game of Thrones universe. Now, what I'm hoping this will happen is this will inspire people to talk to me about this really awesome book. And then we can have discussions about things that may or may not be like. Please put all spoiler stuff in Inviso text, however, below you, so you don't ruin the game for anybody else. But, so if you're going to be watching this and you haven't, if you've only watched the first series, the first season, or if you haven't read any of the books, I'd strongly suggest like putting a window up right here, because I'm going to put pieces of paper here and I'm going to flip them over, and then we can go from there. Now, I apologize for that little preamble, but here we go. I didn't want to ruin anything for anybody, but I really wanted to discuss Game of Thrones with people, so here we go. All right, get the little window up there. I'll give you like 5-6 seconds. Okay, ready? Fine. I really like this game. The really cool thing about this game is that I have lots of situations where I play this with my friends, and we really enjoy the whole process of the game. We enjoy the whole process of actually choosing the different houses. I mean, obviously, certain people have certain things that they like more than others. I myself, I don't really care who I play. I can play House Greyjoy. I can play House Stark. I really don't like playing House Lannister just because I think they're all jerks. But I can appreciate House Lannister to a certain point because of the fact that they do have a fairly decent area on the board, especially after they changed the port rule, and so the Greyjoys couldn't just come in and destroy them. But that's a first edition thing. Now, obviously, of course, Tyrion Lannister is cool. But regardless, now, the thing about the game that probably appeals to me more than anything is that I've never played a game where you have to trust implicitly the other players in order basically to leave you alone. To a certain degree. You kind of pick one person that you're going to attack. Maybe you convince somebody else to join in and beating the heck out of that person. But the thing about it is that you really do rely on trust as far as the game goes. Now, lots of other games like have negotiation and things like that, but this game has it a great deal. There's a great deal of trust that you have to instill in the other players. And of course, ultimately, you have to kind of screw those people over eventually, because of the fact that you can't win the game being friends with people in this game. It's very tough. I mean, even though you're going to be set to attack one other person pretty much the whole time, you have to make sure that usually the one person that's going to allow you to actually take the victory at the end of the game is usually the one that's been trusting you for the most part throughout the entire game. Now, that might actually lead this game to actually the biggest negative about it. Is due to the fact that lots of games that revolve around negotiation or diplomacy are determined how well and how good they are is just basically it's one of those things where people say you shouldn't play it with people that are your really good friends because there's going to be feelings are hurt. Now, if that's a situation where you're playing with people that are going to have their feelings hurt because of the fact that you may have done a sneak attack on them, or you may have just taken over a few of their strongholds during the last turn of the game so you could take the win, well, maybe this isn't the right game for you. Also, this game is a heck of a time investment. Just warning you from the get-go. With all 6 people playing, I mean, you're looking at a good 3-4 hours of sitting around the table. But the really cool thing about that is that you'll never have a better 3-4 hours if they're all really good friends, because the vast majority of the time you're just going to be sitting like this. And then you'll look at somebody across the table and say, you better not screw me on this. And they'll look at you and they'll smile, oh, no, I'm not interested in taking over your lands at all. I'm worried about the Tyrells, you know. So the thing about it is that, do you believe them? Are you just putting on a front? Things like that. Now, I really like negotiation games, so this game plays to my strengths. But if you're not a person that enjoys that, then you're not going to like it. If you're not a person that likes easy to determine whether or not you're going to win or lose combats, then you know this isn't probably going to be a game for you either. Because if you are unable to have just the manpower to defeat them, then you are going to do poorly. And one of the things is that kind of stinks about the game is that if you do end up kind of behind the 8 ball right away, you can end up being behind the 8 ball during the rest of the game. And that means you're staring at 3 to 4 hours of a game where, you just can't ever gain a foothold. Now, if the other players are banding together to put their, put their boot on your neck and leave it there, then maybe either A, you need perhaps a better group that, isn't so mean to you, or B, maybe you should find out what exactly you've done to make them so mad to do that to you. Now, I don't really like using that little expansion, the Tides of Battle expansion, basically because I'm all for chaos and I'm all for randomness in games, but the game itself has to lend itself to that. I want, I'm already dealing, when I'm playing Game of Thrones 2nd Edition, I'm already dealing with the fact that I have several other people's mentalities and personalities that I'm dealing with that I have to try to figure out exactly what their intent is, as far as I'm concerned, that I don't want to have to put together a huge plan combining me and 2 or 3 other houses and then have it all just kind of go for nothing just because I drew a bad card out of a deck. Now that kind of flies in the face of what you probably, if you watch some of my reviews, flies in the face as far as what I normally say about randomness in combat, and randomness is nice. Usually I say, it's like, give me that 1 in 20 shot, I want that. But I guess when I've used that expansion, I've always found that, it's just like, it was very, very upsetting to me that you come up with something and just because somebody else managed to draw a card that had a 3 on it, even though I knew for certain that, the cards that they had in their hand, other than, the random type of battle card, I was going to win that battle no matter what. I mean, that's just kind of annoying, to put together a really, really good strategic idea and have it just, blow up in your face just because of random luck. Now, if that doesn't bother you, then, maybe you want to throw that in. But if you're going to play the game with me, that's not going to happen. Now, bottom line is this game going to be good for you or in your group? Well, if you've got a bunch of people that can sit down and play a game for 2, 3, maybe even 4 hours, and you can manage to play it without getting mad at each other, then I think this game is going to be awesome for you. If you like deep strategic thinking and you like negotiation, I think this game is a must. But you got to have the time to play it. You got to have the right group of people. And I'll be fully honest with you, you probably need to know the whole backstory of all the different houses and what they do and what they mean to each other. Because the really awesome thing about this game is that you get to rewrite the plot of the whole Westeros, of the whole Song of Ice and Fire. And there's a lot of, if everybody at the table has watched the show or read the books, there are tons of little comments and quips that you can always make. And whoever plays Lannister at some point, when they backstab somebody that had slighted them again, they will always say, a Lannister always pays their debts. And and everybody will just nod and go, of course, and it's stuff like that. It's stuff like continuing that story and living out that epic story that you've been following for so long, and doing it in board game form. The game would not nearly be as engaging for me if I was just blue army fighting green army, or here comes the red army and they're going to fight the black army. It just wouldn't be as interesting. And so I think, unlike a game like Battlestar Galactica, where I was able to get into it and really enjoy it without ever watching a show, in order to really enjoy Game of Thrones, I think you need to be kind of a fan of the game. And I guess that's just my opinion, but that's just been my experience. The few people that have played the game that have never read anything and never watched anything were very about the game. But the people that were into the books and into the show were like, let's play it again. So, there you go. Game of Thrones, 2nd edition. I will be watching the very first episode with you this coming weekend, and we can all just think of that all virtually. If you're watching it, we're all watching that together, and how awesome is that going to be? Even though I know what's going to happen, I can't wait to see it play out in front of me. So, until next time, this is Undead Viking. Thank you very much for sitting through this, and I appreciate the time you take to watch all of my videos. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Until next time, this is Lance, Undead Viking. See you later.